Hello and good evening again, everyone. It is always such a blessing to join you for Life Talk, but even greater a blessing to have you tune in and to share in this full hour with us, where we talk about many exciting topics that we want to ensure is blessing your life, touching your life, and advancing you in your many areas of life. And as you know, we touch on numerous subjects and all things that we want to be able to advance you in your daily life. So, wherever you are viewing tonight, this evening, this afternoon, from across the globe, we are asking that you would spend this hour with us on Live Talk. And this afternoon, we are looking at the matters of the power behind healthy living, incorporating natural care and lifestyle into your practices so that you are enjoying a well-rounded life. And I am absolutely delighted, as I am always, to share in those discussions with our incredible and great guests. And this afternoon, we have a very remarkable woman who has dedicated her life to this aspect of natural living. And her name is Dr. Gail Diefel. She has a very extensive bio, which just tells her humility in the way that she has allowed herself to be used by God. She is a cancer research scientist. She specializes in a number of other areas of natural care and is well trained and very highly qualified in her areas of service. I'm going to turn over to her and just ask her to give us a little more background about the various areas that she is serving in and what led into that passion of teaching and training others into the natural way of living. Dr. Diefel, welcome, Dr. Gail Diefel, to our global platform. Would you tell us a bit more about your work that you are doing? You are the CEO of an excellent foundation. Tell us a bit about that and the various areas that you specialize in.
Thank you for having me on. And it is so wonderful to know that we're reaching out to a very exciting and, you can almost feel them, if possible, through the airwaves, just really cheering you on. So thank you again. I guess some of my answers may be a little bit unorthodox. And I'm sure somebody might be waiting for me to tell them I had this passion from youth. As a matter of fact, I was probably a very ordinary pathologist when I began. I didn't particularly like people, and so I found that I was attracted to laboratory medicine and to laboratory research. I'm not a physician, I'm a pathologist. However, what got me into herbs? After you've been in for a while, I can pinpoint the day and the hour when I made that decision. And I was then at the Roswell Park Cancer Institute, which was many years ago the largest cancer research institute in the world. And we had a very young boy, about 6 years old, and he had a particular kind of cancer that it actually had his eye was about to fall out. It was the tumor was behind his eye, and it was what is called a retroorbital tumor. And it was, you could almost have done that and taken his eye out. His eyes, plural, in both eyes. And he was so excited about grade 1. And every week he would come in for his chemo. And after chemo, he would come in and we would talk. And it was the end of August and it was going to be grade 1. And I had a 6-year-old. I remember he brought some brown cookies and he had icing, some cupcakes. And because he couldn't see, the icing ran down one side. And he was just so full of grade 1. And I knew he was never going to make it to grade 1. And I said, I went in the cupboard, closed myself in, and I cried. And I decided for me that it was definitely lab work after that. And again, a pivotal moment when my excitement was all just straight research, straight medicine. And then my husband had a very bad accident. And there was nothing there to treat him. He had serious reactions to all antibiotics. He was resistant to them. He was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was in end-stage kidney failure. He had just days to live. And for me, it was amazing. And as it seems, I heard a voice at about 3 o'clock in the morning saying, give him a particular herb to drink. I had never even drank peppermint myself up to that point. And that was about 20 years ago. But I did do some research, and I found out, interestingly enough, that the particular plant that I was actually directed to go and pick after I did a lot of research on it, my husband actually, literally, we watched it on the x-rays, watched his kidney rebuild itself. And he was in the care, because I do not espouse one without the other, he was in the care of two very eminent kidney specialists. And we literally, that kidney rebuild itself on the ultrasound. And he lived for another 14 years and never, ever needed a kidney transplant. And that really excited me because, then we began to see things that were very good for antibiotics. And then the research and the science behind it authenticated this use. And so I got in from a need to know and use perspective, and then grew into a love of it as I went on to find out that herbs and green things are actually first-rate science.
That just even listening to that story is so encouraging and exciting, because as you well know, globally there are millions of people who battle and suffer kidney disease, many of which have had transplants, many of which actually lost lives. So you are saying that there are actually natural ways by which the kidney can regain its health and actually come back to life, and the person not having to suffer a premature death. That is incredible.
No, and I said, I'm not talking about the science my grandmother told me, although
Right.
that is very important. I have one herb that I'm using right now that I don't want to say the word, but it's kept very many thousands of people from getting COVID. And my grand aunt told me about it. And when I have done the research, first rate, we've even had a doctoral thesis written on it, a tremendous amount of research on it, it actually works. And it works because it prevents the virus from binding. And so as we go ahead, I do not believe in herbs separate to science. I believe that you prove the use of what you're doing by science. If you have something and you think that it is going to work, then you should be able to find the science behind it and the practicality behind it. I don't believe in people saying herbs can't harm you. I'm sorry. I believe that herbs can harm you because there's a saying in medicine, the difference between a medicine and a poison is the dose. So when you use herbs for medicine and for healing, you should know the proper dose, you should know properly how to use it, and you should do your research work. And that's the only kind of herbs I want to work with.
I am thankful for you sharing that, because over the years, of course, with the many individuals who have transitioned into the natural world of using herbs and being treated by herbs, one of the issues that has been problematic is not knowing the right dosage to use. And many people believe that because it is herbs, then you don't have to deal with side effects. But you are saying that is not the best way to approach the situation, which makes sense, because I guess with everything, too much of even a good thing can be a bad thing.
I love your word. I want to segue and just think about it. We love to talk about herbs as though they're something unique and different and apart. Actually, Genesis 9:3 tells us that we're meant to be a part of our normal diet. Let's take something else. Let's say not just herbs. What happens if you have too much regular food? Isn't the major cause of diabetes and hypertension the foods that we're eating out of control? So that tells you anything, even good things, even normal things carried to excess can harm you.
Very, very powerful thought process. I absolutely love it. So that brings me to one of the questions that I have for you this evening. What are your thoughts on the many debilitating diseases that is plaguing humanity? And even by virtue of what you've just shared in terms of just having this knowledge that while kidney issue is a very serious ailment, that there are practical ways that this could be addressed and treated. Do you believe that there is a level of ignorance in terms of people's knowledge of their body and how it functions and how it operates that leads to these diseases ravaging their systems and functionalities?
That's an interesting question because, again, if we were to look at the science, for instance, if you looked at formerly when I worked in the lab, we had to have every month we would have her World Health Organization would send you statistics. So you always be up on what section of the world having what disease. Right now, we're up to 2020, 2021. I think the last stats that came out worldwide were 2018. You might be surprised to find out that what we would like to think of as darkest Africa has the lowest incidence of diabetes and hypertension. When we think about debilitating diseases, it's no longer just thinking about infectious diseases or malaria. You don't want anything more debilitating than diabetes and hypertension, the comorbidities that exist with it, the loss of sight, loss of vision, loss of ability to walk, loss of limbs. That's debilitating. The highest incidence of diseases of that kind are actually in North America and some parts of the Middle East. And so obviously they don't have anything to do with a lack of knowledge. You know, some of the most educated people have the highest incidences of diabetes and hypertension and debility. So it has a lot to do with culture, much more so to do with culture and norms than it has to do with education. And yes, but as I said, the least educated people have the lowest incidences of diabetes and hypertension. There is room for this knowledge to come, but we're not talking about that knowledge in terms of high school or what have you, but as how we move to break into culture. And if you not go to much more extent, one of the major causes of where we are today are monodiets. Monodiets.
Tell
It's
us a
not
little
just
bit
about
about
how
that.
well, if you think about it, think of a regular day. What keeps your body functioning is variety. Just like God doesn't make two leaves that have the same function, many of them have so many different functions. That's what I find fascinating about plants. You go in a plant and you find 200, 300 different molecules. Okay? Now, you take a regular diet. You get up in the morning and you have what for breakfast? Probably toast, bread. You may have cornflakes. Okay? The grains. So you've just probably had 90% of that breakfast are grains. What do you have for lunch? You have a sandwich. Okay, so you said I had toast for breakfast, I had a sandwich for lunch. Now you've added for the day probably 60% of grains. You had it for breakfast and you had it for lunch. What are you going to have for dinner? You're going to have something different, right? You're going to have spaghetti. You're going to have pasta. You're going to have rice. You've just added grains again. So you have eaten 90% of your diet has been grains. Your body needs variety. And you've just fed it the same thing from morning to night to most of your
Wow.
life. So monodiets are really one of the major challenges that we have.
And with that said, let's talk a little bit about feeding the cells, because one of the things that I am learning more on my own journey to better eating and better living is that we are either eating to live or we are eating to die. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how to appropriately feed ourselves, because if our body is made up of cells to, for its very life, going and longevity, and then we give it things that are totally not feeding those things yet expecting to remain healthy. Talk to us a bit about this very dangerous pattern that a person follows by not feeding the cells.
Absolutely. So I want to remember just one word, and if I forget it, bring me back to it. Cell membrane health.
Okay.
Okay? So it's not just the cell that is a challenge, it is the membrane of the cell that is
Mm.
most important. Let's call the membrane of your cell the gatekeeper. Every single cell of the trillions of cells in your body and all the interior of those cells are varied and different. But interestingly enough, they are all covered by a layer, a membrane called a phospholipid membrane, which is made up of fats, lipids. We call lipids are fats. They're made up of a bit of protein with normally the channels going through them, and quite a bit of carbohydrate, as I call that as window dressing, ice cream on it. So although you have trillions of different cells in the body, the governing factor, the membrane of that cell, is what allows the gatekeeper either something to come in or to come out. So one of the most common diseases that we have that is literally a disease of cell membrane is diabetes. You know, we love to think that diabetes is about, I don't have enough insulin. Actually, that is not true. Diabetes is about having too much insulin in the wrong place. So the more food you eat, your cell actually knows how to regulate itself. And after you've eaten too much, that cell says, I'm not accepting any more food.
Wow.
That's what's called insulin resistance. So your body would keep on now producing insulin. It's going to the cell, and the cell is saying, no, you're not putting any more in me. You can go make another cell fat, but you're not making me fat. So
that is amazing.
Well, that's what it does. It says, no, I will not accept any more in here. And so that insulin will actually go now and go to your liver. Okay? And all of the excess sugar and the excess carbohydrates and calories that are floating around and damaging your blood vessels and damaging your cells, you notice one thing, it's going to go to your liver. You're going to get fatty liver disease. And that liver now is going to start increasing. When the liver can't cope anymore, it sends that fat into your fat cells, into your muscles, into your belly. So the body has finely tuned regulatory mechanisms. The Bible says, and I stopped apologizing, I used to teach cell biology. And when I get into membrane physiology, which is how different membranes are regulated in the body, we weren't allowed to talk about God at the university. And I would, just really get really excited about how the cell actually worked. And, you really come down to the fact that the cell speaks several languages. There's a language in the nucleus, there's a language across the membrane, there's a language when it goes to the mitochondria and in the ribosomes. It's the cell actually speaks languages the way you and I speak languages.
That's
and I just say to this, I'm sorry. Don't tell me you can throw a computer, some chips up in the air and comes down a computer, as you tell me that our bodies are not fearfully and
wonderfully made. That's right. It is beautiful. And the way you describe it, I have never heard it put like that before. The way you say that cells speak a language, the way that we speak other languages. That is incredible. Yeah. Incredible. And you are right. I mean, when you just even think about it from that perspective, to actually think that we just happened, but that's a whole other presentation with you. But I love the way that you have put it. So we look at now with what you have described, and since we are on the subject of cell and their uniqueness and their own languages, from your experience and area of expertise, do men and women, the male and female chromosome, do they respond differently to disease? Are there more prevalent diseases in women than men? I know there are illnesses that are unique to just men and women because of the organs that they possess. But in terms of the ones that are shared, like say diabetes and cancer and hypertension, you have both male and female coming down with those. Based on cell formation and language, do men and women, based on their XY chromosomes, do they respond differently to diseases and illnesses? Or tell us a little bit about that.
A little bit of both. Okay. But to be honest, the major reason why more men end up dying, beside literally hormones, than women, and dying at an earlier age, happens to be culture. I mean,
Mm.
in the present culture we are now. So you have to look at developed cultures differently to underdeveloped countries. So you see a disparity in how long a man lives and how long a woman lives, even if you go to cultures that have never been highly socialized. So in Africa, you'll find the same disparity that quite often women will live longer than men, except for childbirth issues. Because in undeveloped countries, more women tend to die from and in childbirth than men. But
Mm.
in developed cultures, the reason that we have a difference is that women tend to go to doctors more often, mainly because they have children. And so you'll find that they go to hospitals, they interact with doctors more often. We are seen as the softest sex, and therefore we don't mind saying, I don't feel well. A lot of why men don't do as well is because they tend to be macho and tough. For instance, most people don't realize that 25% of all breast cancers are in men.
Wow.
Okay, men have 25% of the breast cancers are in men, not just in women. Women
Wow.
have 75% of the breast cancers, but men have a worse outcome because they will not go and get checked until much later than a woman. So, in that sense, you see, that is quite often a reluctance for men to go earlier and more consistently, and women tend to be the keepers of the health in the house. Two people have flu in the house. The man's in bed and the woman's washing the dishes.
And I look forward to another show with you on that.
And nothing against men, love men, but
Oh,
this is one
absolutely
woman.
not. I mean, it is true because even when, in my line of work, we do marital counseling, you do this work with couples, and you will find often that the wife says, how much time and tedious work it takes to encourage her husband to even go to see the doctor, even when he expresses that there are complications with something or there is a problem, the pushing and the constant having to, force to be able to make very few of them are on top of this annual ongoing checkups. And so I can see. So the issue is not as much a matter of cellular differences, but really you saying, well, isn't that
There,
incredible?
there is a difference in terms of longevity because you get around 80, 90 years old in any room, in any church, in any place, I don't, you'll find far more women than men.
Women,
So
yes, yes.
women will live longer than men. And they have put it down to the fact, oh, there are differences in terms of how you are, how your job, maybe this job is more difficult than that job. But that cannot be the whole answer because quite often now you have women doing exactly the same work as men. And we still see that difference in terms of the socialization of health.
Well, is it scientifically proven that women will outlive men by 7 years, or is that just a cliche?
I don't think that you have to do anything. Just go to any gathering of anybody over 80 years and just stick
So
your fingers and
that's my
count.
next homework.
You don't even have to get far.
In other words, we don't even have to rack our brain. You could see
You
it
don't
even
have
just
to.
by that
You
is
can just look
that is
around and see
incredible.
it. Yeah.
So with that shared, now that we've established that we're looking at more, so culture definitely does play a very important role
Very,
in
very
health
important
and
role.
lifestyle
Culture
practices.
has
Then,
a major role to play. Yeah. And we were talking about the membranes and the membranes of the cells, and we're talking about cell health. And I missed a very important point because diabetes is just one disease in which we have one of the most vivid experiences in terms of cell health, but in terms of overall, and I think you'll come to it in cancer, so I just want to remember to mention it there. One of the major challenges in terms of even cancers and so forth has to do with the structure of the cell membrane because I told you the cell membranes have a very high content of phospholipid or cholesterol in it. And we find that when we use certain cooking oils, many oils are very predictive of the types of cancers you get. So many years ago in the Caribbean, we used coconut oil. And back about in the 60s, we were told, no, 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 no. Definitely not coconut oil because it's saturated, it's this, it's that. They was brought out the corn oils and the vegetable oils. And what we never look to see is how those oils were processed.
Mm.
So a lot of the vegetable oils are processed by a process they call cracking. They actually use gasolines to break down and make those oils, and they
Wow.
become very toxic. If a matter of fact, one of the most toxic things you could ever eat, which has been promoted for about 30 or 40 years, is margarine. I said,
Mm.
you take your margarine and you stick it outside in your backyard for the next 2 years and go back and check it. You'll have margarine. And that's because margarine is a couple molecules removed from plastic.
My Lord.
And then to the whole issue of plastics. So those cell membranes are controlled by the things we eat. And a lot of the cancers that we get, quite a bit of the heart disease that we get, come from different factors and foods that affect how those cell membranes.
That is remarkable. I I am totally fascinated by that. But you mentioned the word that makes me think about the liver, and it is the level of toxicity in the body. So let's talk about the dangers of toxic eating foods and its correlation to the liver, which is where toxins are basically process. And that's a major issue in lifestyle today. So many people are suffering from various forms of liver disease and, unaware that a lot of it has to do. So, can we talk about how the liver filters toxins and what that means for foods like margarine that we eat, that is dumping all of these things into the system? And what dangers does that pose for overall health with the liver being so backed up with these toxins?
Well, we can come to that because so many people are out there taking cleanses and buying cleanses.
Yes.
And I'm going to say we have pesticides that are affecting us, toxins, and we can get into all of that. But I want to say something. One of the most toxic things that you have in your body is your own fat.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, if you've ever opened up a body, or even if you've ever cut chicken, you notice that the fat in anything you cut is a different color from the meat. Okay?
Yes.
Fat usually tends to be much whiter, lighter, or yellow. Why do you think that? Why is the flesh brown but the fat white?
That's a
And that's
very good
because
question.
fat has very, very few blood vessels.
Mm.
But to keep fat alive, fat is a cell. But those blood vessels are sometimes removed by inches from the cells themselves. So if you do not have a tremendous rate of activity, you cannot keep fat cells alive. And when fat cells break down, they're toxic. So if you have ever had fat, you know the word we call rancid? Well, just think about it.
Mm.
Same inside of you can become rancid because there are very few blood vessels serving that fat. And so we tend to look at the things we do outside ourselves. Make sure I wash my vegetables, where I buy it, and we buy organic. And we actually farm. And I say our stuff is better than organic because organic still has chemicals put in there.
Wow.
Okay? But we need to go back and understand that your body is not a hose. When you say I'm doing a cleanse, you don't pour something in one end and it just filters through your body and comes out the other end. It's got to go through all those myriad areas. So even if you're thinking about cleanses and so forth, you need to think about addressing your issue with fat first. Or you're wasting your money. You're just having expensive poo or expensive urine. But to have a proper toxic thing that will work for you, you have to address the issue of fat in your body, liver, because the liver also processes carbohydrates and so forth into fats. And it's over when the liver is overwhelmed that you begin to get fat. So if you have begun to put on weight, you need to understand your liver is not working properly. So you can't go and clean out your liver and not address the issue of weight, overweight, and toxic fat. Last one. Anytime you're at rest, why is exercise so important? Even if you do cleanses and so forth. When you are at rest, 40% of your blood vessels are shut down.
Mm.
At the same time that those blood vessels are shut down, there continues to be decay. Vessels are dying, blood cells are dying, and need to be removed from the body. They cannot be removed unless blood is flowing. So as long as you sit, you become toxic because those breakdown products will be in your body, and not until you get up and exercise can they move to be removed from the body. So we have to have a holistic understanding of what having a cleanse means, what is going to work for you. So if all you're going to do is to drink something or eat something, it won't work. I mean, I have some of the greatest body cleanses. Works for COVID too. Okay, it will kill bacteria, virus, and fungus. It will do it, and it will give you energy while you're doing it. But unless you've come to that holistic place of understanding, I'm in charge of my health. I have to address that issue of toxicity. It's not just about what I eat and what I take in, but what's in my own body that causes toxins and breakdowns that are not being eliminated properly.
It's 9 o'clock.
That is amazing. That is truly amazing. So as we, look at this whole system with the liver and the process of cleansing, which many people tend to be very into. It's the end of year, let me do a cleanse. It is the spring, let me do a cleanse, not knowing that all of these factors are at play in addressing the root cause of the issue. And you have brought up something that is actually new to me. It's the fact that the very fat in our system itself is working against that process. That is
Yes.
incredible.
Yes, and again, the issue of fat is major. So whenever you see you're collecting fat around the belly, know that that liver is not working properly. You cannot be overweight and have a liver that's working properly, because it's a fact that the liver is not working properly while you're gaining weight, because it's moving all of that excess fat into the tissues and into the muscles. But think about another dangerous thing that fat does, especially in the belly to you. Okay, so your major blood vessels run right down behind your spine. So if you take your vertebrae, your spinal cord, right in the front of that are the major blood vessels in the body. Okay, so that's it. It's running right like that. Okay, now the more fat that you get accumulating in the abdomen is the more pressure that's going to apply to those blood vessels. So if you think of a hose and you're applying that fat pressure against it, it's actually squeezing those major blood vessels. What's going to happen to your heart? So these things are not separate. The heart now has to work harder to try and push blood through that blood vessel that's been occluded by the fat in your belly. And so that's why fat in your belly is one of the best indicators of a heart disease, because it is pressing against that. So fat is not just about saying, oh, well, I'm overweight and don't tell me about it. If you love yourself, if you really care, I used to smoke 3 packs of 20 a day. My son was 4 years old, and we were in a parking lot, and I hadn't stopped smoking yet. There was a lady sitting in a car smoking, and my son went over and he stood by her and he said to her, "Lady, do you love your children?" I'm still mortified. I mean, I'm getting out of the car, turning the thing, and there's my son talking to a lady in a car. And she says, "Oh, yes, little boy, I love my kids." He says, "But if you really love them, you wouldn't smoke because you might die and leave them alone." That's
Wow.
the first. My son didn't express to me his fear or what children think or what they have absorbed, but I stopped smoking within that week. He never said to me, "Mommy, stop smoking." But I heard the fear in that little voice that he voiced to that woman. Don't you love your children? It's not about whether you love the cigarette. It's, do you love your children? "Mommy, I'm afraid you might die and leave me."
Wow. That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible, an incredible testimony.
So when we're putting on that extra weight, young moms, and also just think about, or when we're even allowing our children to get there. We now have 5-year-olds with heart disease. We have 10 and 12-year-olds with the beginning of arthritis. I know 20-year-olds who are losing their vision. This is a serious, serious matter and a serious time of life for us to be in.
I do agree. It's amazing as you shared that journey with your son, because so many people struggle to smoke, and here you were. It took only that conversation for that to
Hmm.
be your inspiration to quit. So that is a powerful testimony. Well, let's talk a bit now about the heart, because so much of this lifestyle practices are affecting the heart as well. Over the course of a year, millions of people die a year as a result of heart disease. Tell us a bit about eating for the heart and some of the even herbal ways that the heart could be treated. And of course, from what you've shared, we're realizing it's more than just drinking something, popping something, and trying to get rid of the problem. There's a holistic approach that is to be considered when you're looking for better living and overall health. But just from your areas of expertise and experience, just tell us a little bit about what are some of the practical ways to keep a healthy heart, and what are some of the herbs or foods that would contribute to that as well.
Good. There are so many good things that we can do for our heart. Okay. Number one, in heart disease worldwide, there is one major deficiency that I would think contributes to the majority of heart disease. It's a very simple thing. It's a mineral, magnesium.
Mm.
Okay. If you want to think about the way your heart works, think about your light. Okay. So when you get light in your kitchen, it's because you have a filament, a wire, and the electricity comes through it, and you turn on your light switch and you get light, you turn it off. Your heart works exactly the same way. Why does lightning kill you? Because it can depolarize your heart. Your heart works 100% on electricity. Yes, it's going like that. But if you see that heartbeat, it actually is what is called a PQRS complex, and it is a wave of electricity that goes through the heart. We are literally light beings. We work because of electricity. You are an electrical being, and I'm not talking about outer space or anything else. You come into the laboratory, I want to know some of the things that are wrong with you. I can take blood out of your body, and I put it in a little tray, and I run electricity through it. And I can actually separate the proteins on your body based on electricity. It's called electrophoresis. Okay? And I can tell which proteins separate where by electricity. So just in case you don't know, you are alive because of electricity. Now,
Wow.
one of the major things that causes the heart to beat is calcium, magnesium. Those are minerals. This is not magic. This is not rocket science. Calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, bicarbonates. So you need those, and what they do, they form a liquid filament like the light. And so the electricity in your body goes through this liquid, and that's what makes your heart work. So the majority of the times we're going to the doctors and getting all kinds of heart medicines. Just a simple thing of making sure that you have enough calcium and magnesium in your diet, and not the kind that comes out of a rock. We sell a eggshell calcium. And I say the chicken has done the work for you. So a good eggshell calcium with the membranes, because that calcium provides 27 different minerals that are needed by the heart and are needed by your bones. When your heart beats, when I'm teaching school, university, and I have first year students, medical students, I'm telling them how the heart beats. So we know we go boom, 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 but actually the heart goes dum, 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 dum. Contract, relax, contract, relax. The contraction is calcium, magnesium, calcium, magnesium, calcium, magnesium.
Wow.
That's what's contracting, that's what's relaxing. Okay,
Wow.
so the majority of people I know, once you begin to put them on a proper diet of calcium and magnesium, making sure you have enough potassium in your body and electrolytes, that's a major step towards having a good functioning heart. And then there are other herbs, outstanding herbs like guava, a simple thing like that. Guava is tremendous in blood vessels and heart and eyes. We do things like mango leaves. People go, mango leaves. Yes, mango leaves are fantastic for your eyes. It helps to control diabetes, as does guava. Interestingly, the same things that work for diabetes work for the heart,
Mm.
and work for the eyes, and work for the feet. So the same things that help in diabetes also help in all the things that come out of you having diabetes. And I'm
I
talking about saving people from amputations. I'm not talking mild stuff. I mean, I get calls, so and so is on their way to here. I could give you names. So and so is on their way to dialysis. And I've seen that person come back, kept their foot and kept their kidneys. Not magic.
Incredible stuff. But something you said as a pastor and a preacher totally got me excited. And I am so going to be looking into it. And it was your statement about the heart, being about electricity. And you specifically said you are a light. Now, in Matthew 5:14, that is exactly how the believer is referred to. You are the light of the world. And so as I heard that, it kind of got me excited, because one thing I know about the way that Christ shared the gospel, many things that we take as on surface, he spoke on a much deeper level. And so just getting that backdrop from you, I find it to be so fascinating, because everything we do in spirituality and that work is about the heart. And then being told we are a light, and you saying, that the heart is actually functional on this electrical waves of light. It is just incredible. That in itself is a whole sermon that I will be looking into. But I am just really also really moved by some of the remarkable details of the heart, and magnesium and calcium being amongst the very essential minerals that allows it to continue to function, which again comes back to the whole reason that we are doing this. So when we eat foods that are not rich in those particular nutrients or minerals, we're doing a disservice to the heart, because we're not giving it the very thing that allows it to continue to sustain, functionality.
Magnesium functions in 303 different functions in the body.
Wow.
303. Not one, not just heart.
Wow.
Mhm.
That is
That's how
remarkable.
rich calcium and magnesium are. Just
What
two
role,
elements.
just those two elements, what role does potassium play in the heart? Is it good or bad?
Potassium is absolutely good, but not too much of it.
Okay,
Your potassium balance is probably one of the narrowest that you have.
I see.
And whereas you can get away with your calcium and magnesium going out of whack, just 1 or 2 points in potassium is the difference between life and death. So potassium balance is really, really important. And I found out something about a year ago that I actually didn't know. I love mangoes, and so it was mango season, and Dominica had a hurricane, and so all of our mango trees were down for about 2 or 3 years. We had no mangoes. Okay, so just within this last year, the third year, mangoes began to come back again. And so I started eating 3 mangoes a day sometimes, and I began getting these really horrible cramps and pain. And I'm thinking through what could this be, what could that eliminate, and so forth. Finally, I got so bad that I had to get checked, and my potassium was way up. We're talking about too much of a good thing.
Right.
Okay, even the things that we think are good things, we need to do in moderation.
Wow. So
And that
are you saying,
part,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you saying mango is high in potassium and we should watch the level of
yes,
intake?
yes. We're talking about superfoods again when I touch them. For
Yes.
instance, moringa is one of the top superfoods in the world, but moringa powder is one of the highest things you have in potassium. Good in moderation will damage your kidneys and affect you, even your heart, in too high quantities. So you need to know, as I said, moderation and variety are the words we need to remember when we get into things like diets, and we're talking about health and so forth. Don't overdo it.
Thank you for sharing that, because those of us from the tropics, we think it is just very natural to sit with a bucket of mangoes. and just go at it because we love it so much, and it is so sweet, and it is so juicy, and it is so tasty. And on a given day, you can easily just sit with a whole calabash or bucket of mangoes and just totally forget that life exists, and you just get lost in your mangoes. And now you're saying that even that is problematic. Great, yes, but moderation.
I think that's why God made mangoes in season.
Very strong point.
Yes.
Very, very strong point. Well, something I recently learned, because I also do this presentation called Faith and Healing, where I also talk on superfoods and also using your foods as your medicine. And as I was doing my little research there on detoxifying salads, I added mangoes to one of the salads that I created. And whilst I was doing the research, one of the things that I also discovered that I had never before learned was that mango was also very beneficial to treating the matters of sexual dysfunction, that it increased libido and also helped with raising desire and things like that. Generally, things that people would be on meds and drugs for. So maybe the people who indulge in mangoes have other reasons besides just taste, but that's another
Oh, well,
presentation.
yes, healthy. And there are things that we do where we get carried away. I now see people doing things. Oh, kale every day. I do spinach every day. I do all of these. Good example of how dangerous even eating excessive things can be. Number one, kale and spinach and bok choy, a lot of those things are great. But do you know something? As a pathologist, when I sit in front of the microscope, I can tell who eats a lot of kale and who eats a lot of spinach and who eats too much bok choy. Okay?
Mm.
When I was down there and I'm testing a urine sample for somebody who was coming with kidney disease, and I see oxalic acid crystals down there, there's somebody that's eating too much kale and too much bok choy and too much of the heavy green vegetables. So you should not be eating spinach or kale or any of those things more than one,
Every,
two, three times. You
wow.
cannot be juicing them and filling yourself up. And so the very thing that you think you're doing that's doing all of that will come back to have long-term consequences in your diet. As I said, moderation. Do not give
Moderation.
up. Do not give up. Cut down. Cut down. Balance. Balance your plate. Don't go off with this. I'm going to do all of this and all of that. I'm going to get well. No, you need variety. You need exercise. You need moderation, and you need balance.
Very important advice in dealing with the matters of, you know, on this campaign and this, gong ho crusade to be healthier and let me get my greens in, balance, so that you're not in an attempt to be healthy, you're being destructive. So very, very great advice. Well, let's come to cancer and then we can touch a little on superfood as we are coming close to the end of our hour together. You are a cancer research scientist. That is probably the scariest word that a human being hears throughout their lifetime. You have cancer. So many people, the psychological effects that it has. And as you well know, so many lives have been lost by various forms of cancer. Yes, it is a scary word, but could education bring about a greater response to getting that news in knowing what cancer really is and the ways by which it can be, altered, treated, tended to, that it does not have to take a life? Could you, from your area of specialty, both conventionally and your herbalist expertise, could you tell us how a person suffering from this ailment don't have to, live with this fear that it could take me out?
Well, we have more cancers now.
Mm.
If you had told me 50 years ago, I'm now 73, and when I first started studying about cancers, I probably was about 21 or 22. I would never have thought that 50 years later we would have more cancers than we had 50 years ago, but we
Wow.
do. And the majority of those cancers that we have today, I would say maybe 70, 80% of them are related to foods that we eat. Okay, so there's a little song my husband told me he used to sing when he was at summer camp as a young child. It was, "People of otherwise village, don't dig your graves with your teeth."
My Lord.
Okay, so we are digging our graves with our teeth, not by the things we have to eat, but by the things we choose to eat. This is where education make a difference, quite often ignorantly. And the majority of those things, as I said, that affect us in cancers are fats, because they affect the membrane. They're affecting every single cell in your body. Not some. Every single cell in your body has a lipid layer, has a fat layer around it. So the whole body, when you go out and you have fats that are toxic, fats that break down, fats that have been made in the wrong ways, vegetable things, soy oil, soy protein, corn oils, a lot of those chemically processed oils are probably the most dangerous things we have in cancer. Cancers cannot all be avoided. Some of them are genetic. Some of them we might get really scared about when we realize that some viruses can cause cancer. One of the main things that people with HIV die from are cancers. We have seen an outbreak in kindergarten of 7 children who had the same type of cancer. Your cat can give a form of leukemia. So you can catch leukemia from a virus. Many hepatitis C quite often ends with cancers. What can you do to make a change in terms of your susceptibility to cancers? I would say variety, because cancer is about the cells being triggered into overgrowth. We don't realize that quite often the reason that you get fat when you trying awfully to eat properly is because when you do not supply your body with the needed types and variety of nutrients, your body is wiser than you. It knows what it needs. It will actually push you to eat more in an attempt to get what it doesn't have. So you have a bad diet and you wonder, why am I craving fats? Why am I craving carbohydrates? Because it's not that the body wants carbohydrates or fats. It's looking for you to give it a variety so that it can be satisfied. Okay, if you don't give it, that body will push you to eat more. Okay, so one of the best ways to keep healthy, eat every color vegetable that you can imagine. Don't just go out and every day you buy a green lettuce and every day you buy a green cucumber. You go home with the same exact food every week. Get adventurous. Eat different things. I had to smile at my own self. I was questioning myself about having gotten into this study of herbs. And, you think, oh, Lord, look at where I was, promising research scientist, cancer research scientist. And all of a sudden I'm here fascinated and studying with herbs. And people will look at me as though to say, Gail, you failed. You failed. You're studying herbs. What about all of the different areas you were in? And the Lord said to me, he said, read Genesis 9:3. Herbs were meant to be a part of our everyday diet. No different to vegetables. He said, I give you all the green vegetable and the green herbs for food. It is because we have left out the herbs out of our diet why we're having some of the major challenges we have. We're told that the herbs are given for the healing of the nation. Most of the herbs I know are highly health-centered, health-causing, bringing about such major changes. I said, I can think of things that will work in an hour. In terms of herbs. So that we're meant to be a part of the normal diet, and we have left them out.
Very powerful thought process, the spiritual integration of what you've said. And it is true. One of the reasons why the world suffers the way that it has, and the millions of lives has been lost, is because we have segued away from what God has given to us. And as a result, we have suffered the many ailments and diseases that are plaguing our bodies and our systems today. Which brings me to my very final question to you for the evening. And we have only about a minute to respond to this one. The Word of God said in the book of 3 John 2, I wish that above all things that you would prosper and be in the very best of health, good health, but even as your soul prospers. Just in a few seconds, how essential and vital is the spiritual life to the way that we eat and drink?
Absolutely. Because with what will form what you do eat and drink is a very basic thing. The Lord said, who he loves, he disciplines. We need to become disciplined in what we eat. And one of the greatest disciplines for you in the ability to choose wisely what you eat is the discipline of spirituality. And we need to learn to say no to ourselves. And that is all spirituality. Learn to say no to your own self. And that's the basis of sin when we can say, no, I will not do that. That's the basis of health. No, I will not eat that. Yes, I will eat this. It's not about what I feel. It's not about what I taste. It's about what I discipline myself to do.
Very powerful. And the Apostle Paul speaks about disciplining his own body. And the word reminds us in that whatever we eat and whatever we drink, we must do it all to the honor and to the
Glory.
glory of God. What an honor it was tonight sharing in this hour with you. Fascinating and very incredible things. You and I could probably speak for another hour. I will be looking forward to sharing with you again on other topics because your expertise is so broad and your depth of knowledge is remarkable. There is so much more that the global audience can benefit from your area of service and expertise. I want to say thank you to you for devoting today to sharing in the live talk presentation with us. Your contribution is invaluable, and I can only wish you the very best as you continue to teach and to train others on how to serve, their communities through their own lifestyles, themselves, but above all, the God that you and I serve and love. And to everyone out there who has joined us this afternoon, we want to thank you so much for sharing in this live talk, Restored Soul presentation with us, because God wants our souls to be restored. And what an incredible way to begin that journey, but by healthy lifestyle practices. Until next time, God bless you and have a wonderful and safe afternoon.